Willow had learned to stay hidden during her 23 years of life. She had mastered the skill of moving through the evergreen pack without getting attention or causing trouble. She kept her bright blonde hair in a simple braid instead of fancy styles like the other Omegas wore. She wore plain dresses in quiet colors that helped her blend into the background. She kept her ice blue eyes looking down so people wouldn't notice how unusual they were, how pale and bright they looked against her white skin. Staying hidden was safer than being noticed, especially for an orphan Omega with no family and no important connections. Today, hiding was impossible because the entire pack was getting ready for their Alpha King's mating ceremony, and everyone was needed to help with this huge event. Willow could hear the celebration from the nursery at the far edge of pack territory where she'd spent the last 3 weeks taking care of Drake's 4 motherless pups. Music floated through the forest along with laughter and excited talking. The smell of cooking meat and fresh bread made her stomach growl since she'd skipped breakfast to calm the twins through one of their crying fits, which were happening less often now. She should be happy for Drake. She should be celebrating that he'd finally chosen a Luna after 6 months of the council pressuring him to remarry after his previous mate's sad death. She should be relieved that the pack's safety would be restored with a proper queen in place. But every time she thought about Drake marking someone else, about him standing before the moon goddess and tying his soul to another Omega, something in Willow's chest broke a little more. This was silly and sad because Drake had rejected her 6 months ago in front of the entire pack during the selection ceremony. He had looked into her eyes for one quick moment where she'd felt something electric and impossible pass between them, and then he'd said clearly and coldly, "No bond here, next." He'd moved on to the next Omega without looking back, leaving Willow standing there with her heart in pieces and her face burning with embarrassment. She'd run from the ceremony hall, had hidden in her small cottage at the edge of pack territory, and had cried for 3 days straight. Then she'd pulled herself together, accepted that an orphaned Omega with no family and no status was never going to be chosen by an Alpha King, and returned to her quiet life working in the pack nursery. It was fine. She was fine. She'd been invisible before the ceremony, and she'd be invisible after it. Nothing had changed, except now she knew for certain that the strange pull she'd felt toward Drake for years was completely one-sided. Except now she was caring for his children and falling desperately in love with 4 white wolf pups who called her mama when they forgot she wasn't really theirs. The tragedy had happened 3 weeks ago. Drake's mate, Catherine, had been leading a border patrol when a planned rogue attack hit 3 places at the same time. She'd died defending pack territory, had taken down 5 rogues before being overwhelmed, and had saved a dozen wolves through her sacrifice. She'd been a good Luna, strong and capable, though everyone knew hers and Drake's had been a political match rather than a love match. They'd respected each other and had created 4 beautiful pups together, but there had been no mate bond between them. Her death had devastated Drake anyway. He'd thrown himself into hunting down every rogue involved, had barely slept or eaten for 2 weeks, and had been consumed by guilt that he hadn't been there to protect her. His grief and rage had been so intense that he couldn't bear to look at his children without breaking down. The pups reminded him too much of what he'd lost, of his failure to keep their mother safe. Meanwhile, his children were suffering. 4-year-old Ash tried to be brave, but had nightmares every night. 3-year-old Snow had stopped talking completely after watching her mother's body carried home. The 18-month-old twins, Frost and Storm, cried constantly for a mother who would never come back. Every nanny in the pack had tried caring for them and failed. The pups were too traumatized, too angry, too scared. They bit and kicked and screamed until even the most patient caretakers gave up in frustration. Then someone had suggested Willow, the invisible Omega who worked in the nursery and had a gift for calming even the most difficult pups. Willow, who'd been raised by her grandmother, a well-known healer and child specialist, until the old woman died when Willow was 16. Willow, who had no family obligations and lived alone, who could dedicate herself completely to the royal pups without distraction. Willow had said yes without hesitation, despite knowing it would break her heart, despite knowing she'd be caring for the children of the man who'd rejected her while he prepared to mate someone else, because those pups needed help, and she couldn't ignore a child's suffering, no matter how much it hurt her personally. The first week had been terrible. Ash had thrown things at her and screamed that she wasn't his mama and needed to leave. Snow had hidden under furniture and refused to eat. The twins had cried so hard and so long that Willow thought they'd make themselves sick, but she'd been patient and gentle and persistent. She'd sung the lullabies her grandmother had taught her. She'd read stories in her softest voice. She'd shifted to her small white wolf form and let the pups curl up in her warm fur when they needed comfort. Slowly, impossibly, they'd begun to trust her. Ash started helping her with small tasks around the nursery. Snow began eating again, then eventually started following Willow everywhere. The twins learned to reach for her when they were upset, knowing she'd always pick them up. And one morning, Ash had called her Mama Willow, then looked terrified he'd made her angry. Willow had just hugged him and told him he could call her whatever made him comfortable. Now, 3 weeks later, the nursery had transformed from a place of grief and chaos into something that almost felt like home. The walls were covered with drawings the pups had made, mostly pictures of Willow in her white wolf form with 4 smaller wolves playing around her. Fresh wildflowers that Ash picked every morning sat in jars on every surface. Snow's favorite blanket, the one she'd rejected for weeks after her mother's death, now smelled like Willow, and the little girl carried it everywhere. The twins had finally started sleeping through the night. As long as Willow was nearby, it was beautiful and heartbreaking, because tomorrow a new Luna would take over raising these pups and Willow would return to her invisible life in the main nursery. Cassandra, Drake's chosen mate, had made it clear during her brief visit last week that she expected the temporary nanny to train the permanent staff and then leave. She'd been cold and dismissive to the pups, had flinched when Storm reached for her with sticky hands, and had looked at the nursery's cheerful chaos with barely hidden distaste. The pups had been terrified of her. Snow had hidden behind Willow the entire visit. Ash had been unusually quiet. The twins had cried the moment Cassandra tried to hold them. It had been a disaster that everyone pretended not to notice because Cassandra was from a powerful allied pack, and this marriage was about politics and stability, not love or compatibility. Willow tried not to think about tomorrow. She tried to focus on today, on this last afternoon with the pups she'd grown to love like they were her own. She sat on the nursery floor in a patch of warm sunlight streaming through the tall windows, wearing her simplest dress and an apron covered in paint stains from the morning's art project. Ash was beside her, arranging his toy soldiers in complicated battle formations, while explaining the strategy to her in serious detail. Snow was curled against her left side, silent but content, her small hand gripping Willow's sleeve like she was afraid to let go. The twins were napping in Willow's lap, their white blonde hair so similar to her own that strangers sometimes assumed they were hers. She was singing softly, an old lullaby about the moon goddess watching over her wolves, when she felt the shift in the air that meant someone powerful was approaching. Her wolf stirred restlessly inside her, recognizing an alpha's presence before her human senses could identify who it was. Probably another pack official come to check that everything was ready for tomorrow's transition, she thought with resignation. The nursery door opened and Drake walked in. Willow's voice died in her throat. Her heart stopped and then started again at triple speed. Drake was here, the alpha king who'd rejected her, the father who'd been avoiding his children for 3 weeks, the man who was supposed to be getting ready for his mating ceremony happening in less than 2 hours. He looked terrible despite his formal clothes. His platinum blonde hair was styled, but his ice blue eyes were haunted and exhausted. His jaw was tight with tension, and his hands were clenched into fists at his sides. He stood in the doorway, staring at the scene before him like he'd walked into something completely unexpected instead of a nursery where his children were being cared for. Willow froze. Hyper-aware of her casual appearance and undignified position on the floor, she should stand, should bow, should show proper respect to the Alpha King. But Snow was pressed against her side, and the twins were asleep in her lap, and Ash was looking between them with worried eyes. "Papa!" Ash jumped to his feet, his face lighting up with joy before uncertainty crept in. Drake had barely spoken to his children since Catherine's death. Every interaction had been brief and painful for everyone involved. "Papa, you came! Do you want to play soldiers with me? Mama Willow says I'm getting really good at strategy." The room went completely silent. Willow watched horror dawn on Ash's face as he realized what he'd said. She wanted to reassure him, wanted to tell him it was okay, but she couldn't speak with Drake's intense gaze now locked on her. "Mama." Drake's voice was rough, like he hadn't used it in days. His eyes never left Willow's face. Ash backed up a step, his earlier joy turning to fear. "I'm sorry. I know she's not really our mama. I didn't mean to be bad. Please don't send her away." Something in Drake's expression cracked. He took a step into the room, then another, moving slowly like he was approaching something precious and fragile. "I'm not sending anyone away, Ash. You call her Mama." "She acts like a mama acts," Ash said defensively, moving to stand between Drake and Willow like he was protecting her. "She sings to us and reads stories and doesn't get angry when we're sad. She makes the nightmares go away. She loves us." Drake's eyes finally shifted from Willow to really look at his children for the first time in weeks. Ash standing protectively, one small hand reaching back to touch Willow's shoulder. Snow pressed against Willow's side, her gray-blue eyes watching her father warily. The twins sleeping peacefully in Willow's lap, their faces relaxed and content in a way Drake probably hadn't seen since before their mother's death. "You've been here the whole time," Drake said slowly, still looking at his pups. "Caring for them. Living here with them." "Yes, Alpha," Willow managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. "For 3 weeks since the council asked me to help with the transition after Luna Catherine's death. I've been staying in the nursery quarters to provide consistent care." Drake moved closer, drawn by something he couldn't name. Up close, Willow looked exhausted with dark circles under her pale eyes and her platinum hair falling loose from its braid. Her dress was simple and worn, her apron stained. She wore no jewelry or makeup, made no effort to appear attractive or noticeable. She was exactly as he remembered from the selection ceremony, 6 months ago when he'd felt the mate bond snap into place, and then immediately suppressed it because the council had convinced him he needed a politically powerful Luna. He'd been a coward. He had let fear and politics control his choice. He had rejected his true mate because she had no family connections, no influential allies, nothing to offer politically. The council had argued that an alpha king needed a Luna who could navigate complex pack politics and bring strategic advantages, that an orphaned nursery worker, no matter how kind, wasn't suitable for a queen. Drake had convinced himself they were right. He had forced himself to feel nothing when he looked into Willow's ice-blue eyes and lied about the bond. He had spent 6 months trying to ignore his wolf's constant protest that their mate had been rejected. He had finally agreed to marry Cassandra because the council insisted and because he was so consumed by guilt over Catherine's death that he couldn't think clearly anymore. But now, seeing Willow surrounded by his children, seeing the love and peace in this room, seeing how his traumatized pups had healed under her care, Drake felt the mate bond surge to full strength. His wolf howled in recognition and relief and desperate need. This was his mate. This was his Luna. This was the woman who should have been his from the beginning, and he'd rejected her. And now he had 90 minutes before he was supposed to mark someone else. "They love you," Drake said, the words coming out hoarse. "My children, they're happy with you. I can see it." Willow's expression shuddered, her eyes dropping to avoid his gaze. "They're good pups, Alpha. Anyone would love them." "That's not true," Drake said, kneeling down to her level, ignoring protocol and propriety. "Every other caretaker failed with them. They were suffering and no one could help. But you brought them back. You gave them peace when I couldn't even look at them without falling apart." Snow stirred against Willow's side, her small voice breaking weeks of silence. "Papa, are you taking Mama Willow away? Please don't, she makes me feel safe again. The nightmares are smaller when she's here." Drake felt his heart shatter. His daughter had finally spoken, and it was to beg him not to take away the woman who'd become her mother figure. The woman he'd rejected because he'd been too afraid to claim his true mate. "I'm not taking her away." "Snow," Drake promised, though he had no idea how he could keep that promise with Cassandra arriving for the ceremony. "I just needed to see you. To see all of you. I've been a terrible father these past weeks." "You were sad," Ash said with the blunt wisdom of a 4-year-old. "Mama Willow said you were sad about Mama Catherine dying, and that's why you couldn't visit much. She said sadness sometimes makes people act different and we shouldn't be mad at you." Drake's eyes snapped back to Willow, who was blushing and still refusing to meet his gaze. "You defended me to them even after He couldn't finish the sentence in front of his children. "You're their father and their alpha," Willow said quietly, her arms tightening protectively around the sleeping twins. They needed to understand that your absence wasn't about them, that you love them even when grief makes it hard to show. Mama Willow says love is like the moon, Snow added, her voice gaining strength. Sometimes clouds cover it up so you can't see it, but it's always there. You're just covered in sad clouds right now, but the love is still there underneath. Drake couldn't breathe. This woman, this Omega he'd rejected and humiliated, had been teaching his children about his love for them while he wallowed in guilt and grief, had been healing their trauma and soothing their fears and filling the hole their mother's death had created, had been everything they needed when he couldn't be, and in 90 minutes, he was going to bind himself to someone else forever. I should go, Willow said carefully, trying to shift the twins off her lap without waking them. The ceremony must be starting soon. I'm sure you want time with your pups before everything changes tomorrow. Don't, Drake said sharply, then softer. Please don't leave. Not yet. Willow finally looked directly at him, and the pain in her ice-blue eyes made him want to howl. Alpha Drake, you made your choice 6 months ago. Today you're making it again by mating Cassandra. I've made my peace with that. But I can't watch you prepare to mark someone else. I can't sit here and pretend my heart isn't breaking. I deserve more respect than that. You're right, Drake said immediately. You deserve so much more than I've given you. You deserve honesty and respect and everything. Let me be honest now, even though it's too late. Even though I've already destroyed any chance I had with you. Ash and Snow were watching with wide eyes, clearly sensing something important happening, even if they didn't understand all the words. The twins stirred but didn't wake, their small faces peaceful against Willow's shoulder. 6 months ago at the selection ceremony, I felt the mate bond snap into place when I looked at you, Drake said, the words tumbling out desperately. My wolf recognized you instantly. You're my true mate, Willow. You always have been. But the council convinced me I needed a politically powerful Luna, that an orphaned Omega with no family connections wasn't suitable for a queen. So I rejected the bond and I rejected you, and I've regretted it every single day since. Willow stared at him, her pale face going even whiter. You felt the bond and you rejected it anyway. You humiliated me in front of the entire pack even though you knew we were true mates. I was a coward, Drake said, his voice breaking. I let politics and fear control my choice instead of trusting the moon goddess. I told myself I was doing what was best for the pack, but really I was just too afraid to fight the council, too afraid to claim a mate they deemed unsuitable. And then Catherine died and I was drowning in guilt and grief. And when the council pushed me to choose Cassandra, I gave in because it was easier than fighting, because I thought I deserved to be miserable after failing Catherine. But now you know I'm caring for your pups, Willow said, her voice sharp with hurt and anger. Now that it's convenient, now that your children love me, now you suddenly want to acknowledge the mate bond you rejected. How is that fair? How is that anything except you using me because I'm useful? It's not fair, Drake admitted. None of this is fair to you. But seeing you with my children, seeing the love and peace you've brought them, it made me realize what I've thrown away. You're not just useful, Willow. You're everything. Everything I needed but was too blind to see. Everything my children need. Everything this pack needs. You're my true mate. And I've been trying to kill that bond for 6 months, and my wolf is dying because of it. Then you should have thought of that before you arranged to mate someone else, Willow said, tears starting to stream down her pale cheeks, even as she tried to maintain her composure. You should have thought of that before you destroyed my dignity in front of the pack. You should have thought of that before you spent 6 months ignoring me while I was falling in love, with you from a distance like the pathetic invisible Omega I've always been. The confession hung in the air between them. Willow looked horrified that she'd said it out loud. Drake looked like he'd been struck by lightning. You love me, Drake whispered, hope and devastation roaring in his voice. Even after everything I did, you love me. It doesn't matter, Willow said, wiping angrily at her tears. You have a ceremony to attend, a beautiful, politically connected Omega waiting to become your Luna. A pack counting on stability. My feelings are irrelevant compared to all that. Mama Willow, don't cry, Snow said urgently, climbing into Willow's lap with the twins and wrapping her small arms around Willow's neck. Papa, you're making her sad. You're not supposed to make Mamas sad. Ash stepped forward, his young face set with determination. Papa, do you love Mama Willow? Drake looked at his son, then at Willow holding his 3 other children, all of them looking at him with varying degrees of hope and worry and love. His wolf was howling that his mate was right there, that his children adored her, that everything he needed was in this room if he was just brave enough to claim it. Yes, Drake said clearly. I love her. I've loved her since the moment I saw her 6 months ago, even when I was trying to deny it. She's my true mate and I've been a fool. Then why are you marrying the scary lady? Ash asked with a child's brutal honesty. We don't like her. She looked at us like we were dirty. Mama Willow loves us even when we're messy. Drake stood up abruptly, pacing to the window and staring out at the pack grounds where preparations for his mating ceremony were in full swing. Everything was ready. The council was waiting. Cassandra was probably already dressed in her ceremonial robes. Their packs had agreements in place that would be jeopardized if he backed out now. But his mate was behind him, holding his children. His true mate, who'd been rejected and humiliated, who'd spent 3 weeks pouring love into his traumatized pups when he couldn't bear to face them, who deserved better than to be his second choice, his convenient option, his political compromise. He turned back to face Willow, who was watching him with heartbreak written clearly across her delicate features. If I cancel the ceremony, he said slowly, if I publicly claim you as my true mate in front of the entire pack and the council and Cassandra's delegation, what would you say? Willow's breath caught. You can't cancel. The political ramifications would be enormous. Cassandra's pack could declare it an insult. The council would fight you. Everything is already arranged. I don't care, Drake said, meaning it with every fiber of his being. I don't care about politics or councils or arrangements. I care about doing what's right, about being brave enough to claim my true mate this time, about giving my children the mother they've already chosen, about choosing you over everything else like I should have done 6 months ago. They'll hate me, Willow whispered. The pack, the council. They'll say I'm a homewrecker, that I seduced you, that I used your children to manipulate you. I'll go from invisible to notorious, and it won't be the good kind of attention. Then I'll defend you, Drake said fiercely. I'll make it clear that I'm the one who rejected the bond initially. I'm the one who made the wrong choice. You're blameless in this. You're the victim of my cowardice, and you're the hero who saved my children when no one else could. I don't want to be a victim or a hero, Willow said, more tears falling. I just want to be wanted for myself, not because I'm convenient or useful or good with your pups. I want someone who chooses me first, not as a last-minute replacement when their political arrangement falls through. Drake crossed the room in 3 long strides and dropped to his knees in front of her, careful not to disturb the 3 children now piled in her lap. He took her free hand in both of his ice blue eyes intense on hers. I'm choosing you, Willow, not because you're convenient, not because you're useful. I'm choosing you because you're my true mate, and I've been dying slowly without you. I'm choosing you because my wolf has been howling for you every single day since I rejected the bond. I'm choosing you because when I walked in here and saw you with my children, I felt complete for the first time in my life. I'm choosing you because I love you, and I've been too stupid and afraid to admit it until now. But the timing, Willow protested weakly, clearly wanting to believe him, but afraid to hope. It's all so sudden and convenient. The timing is terrible, Drake agreed. I'm doing this in the worst possible way at the worst possible moment. But that actually proves I'm sincere, doesn't it? If this was about convenience, I'd go through with the ceremony and keep you as a nanny in the background. I'd take the easy route like I've been taking for 6 months. But I'm not doing that. I'm choosing the hard path. The path that requires me to face the council and cancel a major political alliance and admit I was wrong. I'm choosing chaos and difficulty and potential diplomatic consequences because that's what choosing you requires. And you're worth it. You're worth everything. Snow lifted her head from Willow's shoulder. Papa's right, Mama Willow. You're worth everything. Please don't leave us. Please be our real mama forever. Willow looked down at the 3-year-old clinging to her, at the twins sleeping peacefully in her lap, at Ash hovering nearby with hope written all over his small face. Then she looked at Drake, still kneeling before her, offering her everything she'd ever wanted in the worst possible circumstances. If I say yes, she whispered. If I agree to this, there's no going back. The pack will never forget. The council will always resent me. Your alliance with Cassandra's pack might crumble. Are you really willing to risk all that? Are you sure you won't regret this in a year when the political consequences become clear? I regret rejecting you 6 months ago, Drake said with absolute certainty. I regret every day I spent trying to deny our bond. I regret letting you suffer in silence while I prepared to mate someone else. Those are my regrets. Claiming you, choosing you, loving you, those will never be regrets, no matter what consequences follow. Willow closed her eyes, tears streaming down her face as she warred with herself. Part of her wanted to say yes desperately, wanted to believe in happy endings and true mates and love conquering all. But another part remembered the humiliation of rejection, the pain of being invisible, the fear of trusting someone who'd already hurt her once. I'm scared, she admitted in a broken whisper. I'm so scared of believing in this and having you change your mind again. Then I'll spend the rest of my life proving I mean it, Drake said, bringing her hand to his lips and kissing it gently. I'll court you properly. I'll show the entire pack that you're precious and valued and absolutely worthy of being Luna. I'll never give you reason to doubt my commitment. I'll choose you every single day for the rest of our lives. Please, Willow, please give me a chance to make this right. Give me a chance to be the mate you deserve instead of the coward I've been. Say yes, Mama Willow, Ash pleaded. Please, we need you. Papa needs you. Everyone needs you. Willow opened her eyes and looked at Drake kneeling before her, at his children who'd already claimed her as their mother, at the future stretching out before them, full of complications and challenges and potential heartbreak. She thought about her grandmother, who'd always told her that the right choice was rarely the easy one. That love required bravery and trust and the willingness to risk pain for the chance at joy. Okay, she breathed, the word barely audible, then stronger. Okay, yes, I'll take the risk. I'll trust you. I'll be your mate, and their mother, and the Luna this pack needs. But Drake, if you hurt me again, if you make me regret this, I will never forgive you. Drake surged forward and kissed her, careful of the children between them, but unable to contain his relief and joy any longer. It was brief and chaste, but it felt like coming home, like two pieces of a puzzle finally snapping together after being forced apart. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining with unshed tears. You won't regret it, he promised. I swear on my position as Alpha King, on my honor, on my children's lives. You will never regret choosing to trust me. So what now? Willow asked, practical even in the midst of emotional upheaval. You have a ceremony starting in about an hour. How exactly do you plan to cancel it? Drake stood up, his jaw set with determination. I go to the ceremony hall and I tell everyone the truth. That I made a terrible mistake 6 months ago when I rejected my true mate. That I can't go through with a political mating when my true mate is here. That Willow is my chosen Luna, and anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me for the alpha position. They'll be furious, Willow warned. The council, Cassandra, her pack's delegation. Let them be furious, Drake said. I'm the Alpha King. My word is law. And my word is that you're my mate and my Luna, and that's final. He turned to his children, who were watching the adults with varying degrees of understanding. Ash, Snow, can you two be brave for me? I need to go make a big announcement, but Mama Willow will stay here with you. I'll come back as soon as I can, and then we're all going to be a family. A real family. Does that sound good? You're going to make Mama Willow our real mama? Ash asked, his eyes going wide. Forever? Forever, Drake confirmed. She'll be your Luna mother. She'll live with us in the royal quarters and take care of you always. No one will take her away. Snow burst into tears, but they were happy tears this time. Really, truly, she can stay forever? Really, truly, Drake promised, ruffling his daughter's white blonde hair. He looked at Willow, drinking in the sight of her surrounded by his pups, committing this moment to memory. I'll be back within the hour. Wait for me. I'll be here, Willow said, still looking slightly dazed by how fast everything had changed. We'll be here. Drake kissed her once more, longer this time, pouring everything he felt into it. Then he straightened his formal clothes, took a deep breath, and walked out of the nursery toward what was probably going to be the most difficult hour of his life. The ceremony hall was packed with wolves from both packs when Drake arrived. Cassandra was already there in her elaborate ceremonial robes, her dark hair styled perfectly, her makeup flawless. She was objectively beautiful and would have made an impressive Luna in terms of appearance and political connections, but she wasn't his mate. She wasn't Willow. The council members were clustered near the front, looking important and satisfied. The pack members filled the remaining seats, dressed in their best clothes and clearly excited for the spectacle. Cassandra's family and their delegation from the Silverpine pack occupied the left side of the hall, their posture radiating self-satisfaction at the advantageous alliance. Drake walked to the center of the ceremonial space, and the room fell silent. Every eye turned to him expectantly. He could feel the weight of tradition and expectation pressing down on him, demanding he go through with this mating, this alliance, this compromise of his happiness for political stability. He thought about Willow in the nursery with his children, about the mate bond pulsing between them, about the choice between duty and love, between doing what was expected and doing what was right. "There will be no ceremony today," Drake announced, his voice carrying clearly through the stunned silence. "I owe everyone here an explanation and an apology, but first I owe one person a public acknowledgement that's 6 months overdue." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Cassandra's face went pale with shock and then red with fury. The council members looked at each other in confusion and growing alarm. 6 months ago, I held a selection ceremony to choose a Luna," Drake continued, his ice-blue eyes scanning the crowd. "During that ceremony, I felt the mate bond snap into place with an Omega named Willow. She's an orphan who works in the pack nursery. She has no family connections, no political influence, no powerful allies. The council convinced me she wasn't suitable to be Luna, so I rejected the bond. I lied to her face and told her there was no connection between us. I humiliated her in front of the entire pack because I was too much of a coward to claim my true mate when she didn't meet political requirements." The murmurs grew louder. Wolves were turning to each other, whispering urgently. Cassandra was staring at Drake like he'd lost his mind. The council looked like they wanted to drag him off the stage and shake some sense into him. "I spent 6 months trying to suppress the mate bond and pretend I'd made the right choice," Drake said, his voice growing stronger. "Then my mate Catherine died, and I was consumed by grief and guilt. The council pushed me to choose a new Luna quickly for political stability. I agreed to mate with Cassandra because it seemed easier than fighting, easier than admitting I'd already rejected my true mate, easier than dealing with the mess I'd created." He turned to face Cassandra directly. "Cassandra, you deserve better than to be someone's political convenience. You deserve a mate who truly wants you, not someone settling for an arrangement. I'm calling off this ceremony because it would be unfair to both of us. I apologize for the embarrassment and inconvenience, and I'll personally compensate your pack for any losses incurred by this cancellation." Cassandra's eyes were blazing with fury and humiliation. "You're canceling our mating ceremony because of some nursery worker? Because of an orphaned Omega with nothing to offer? Have you lost your mind?" "No," Drake said calmly. "I'm finally thinking clearly after 6 months of letting others make my choices for me. Willow is my true mate. She's the woman the moon goddess chose for me. And more than that, she's the woman who saved my children when they were drowning in grief and trauma. She spent 3 weeks caring for them when I couldn't even look at them without falling apart. My pups call her Mama because she's been more of a mother to them than anyone else could be. She's everything this pack needs in a Luna and everything I need in a mate." The council members were on their feet now, several of them trying to speak over each other. Elder Marcus, the head counselor, finally made himself heard. "Alpha Drake, this is madness. You can't cancel a major political alliance because of some infatuation with a nursery worker. Think about what you're doing." "I am thinking clearly for the first time in months," Drake shot back. "I'm thinking about what's best for my children. I'm thinking about honoring the mate bond the moon goddess created. I'm thinking about doing what's right instead of what's politically expedient. And I'm thinking that any council that tried to convince me to reject my true mate doesn't have this pack's best interests at heart. But the alliance with Silverpine Pack," another council member started, "can be maintained. Through other means," Drake interrupted. "Trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, shared resources. There are a dozen ways to strengthen pack relationships that don't require me to mate with someone who isn't my true match. And frankly, if Silverpine Pack would rather have war than accept my choice of Luna, then they're not the kind of ally we need anyway." Cassandra's father stood up, his face mottled with rage. "This is an insult to my family and my pack. You invited us here, arranged this ceremony, made promises and agreements, and now you're backing out because of some Omega nobody. This is unacceptable. What's unacceptable is trying to force an Alpha King to reject his true mate for political gain, Drake said coldly. What's unacceptable is treating Omegas like they're worthless if they don't have the right family connections. What's unacceptable is this entire system that values politics over genuine bonds and alliances over happiness. I'm done playing by rules that go against everything the moon goddess intended. He turned back to address the entire hall. Willow is my true mate, and she will be your Luna. Anyone who has a problem with that can challenge me for the alpha position right now. Otherwise, accept my choice and show her the respect she deserves as your queen. Silence fell over the hall. No one moved to challenge him. Even those who disagreed with his decision weren't foolish enough to fight an Alpha King in his prime over his choice of mate. Cassandra drew herself up with as much dignity as she could muster. You'll regret this, Drake. When the political consequences catch up with you, when your council turns against you, when your pack suffers because you chose some nobody over a strong alliance, you'll regret this moment. No, Drake said with absolute certainty. The only thing I regret is not doing this 6 months ago. I regret the pain I caused Willow. I regret the time I wasted trying to deny our bond. I regret listening to voices that told me politics mattered more than love. But choosing Willow? That's the first right choice I've made in a long time. He bowed slightly to Cassandra and her delegation. Safe travels back to Silver Pine Pack. I genuinely hope you find a mate who deserves you and loves you properly. Then he turned and walked out of the ceremony hall, leaving chaos and outrage in his wake. He didn't care. His mate was waiting for him. His children were waiting. His future was waiting. Everything that actually mattered was in that nursery at the edge of pack territory. When Drake pushed open the nursery door, Willow looked up from where she was reading a story to the pups. Her ice-blue eyes were wide and anxious, clearly having heard some of the commotion from the ceremony hall despite the distance. Did you really do it? She asked breathlessly. Did you really cancel the ceremony? I really did it, Drake confirmed, crossing the room to kneel before her again. I told everyone that you're my true mate and my chosen Luna. There will be consequences and challenges ahead. The council is furious. Cassandra's pack feels insulted, but I don't care about any of that because I have you, if you'll still have me after everything that's happened. Willow touched his face gently, her pale fingers trembling slightly. You really chose me. You really stood in front of everyone and claimed me despite all the political fallout. I chose you, Drake said firmly. I chose us. I chose our future together, and I'll keep choosing you every day for the rest of our lives. She kissed him then, soft and sweet and full of hope. The pups cheered and piled onto them both, creating a tangle of bodies and laughter and love in the middle of the nursery floor. Later that evening, Drake called a pack meeting to formally introduce Willow as his true mate and chosen Luna. She stood beside him in the great hall wearing a simple but elegant dress that one of the pack's Omegas had insisted on giving her. Her platinum blonde hair was loose around her shoulders, and her ice-blue eyes were nervous but determined. Drake kept his hand on the small of her back as he addressed the pack. Many of you don't know Willow because she spent years being invisible by choice. She's the Omega who works in the nursery, who's cared for countless pups over the years without seeking recognition or reward. She's the woman who saved my children when they were drowning in grief, and everyone else had given up. She's my true mate, and 6 months ago, I made the terrible mistake of rejecting her because I let politics and fear control my choices. He pulled Willow closer, making it clear she belonged at his side. I know many of you expected Cassandra to be your Luna. I know this sudden change creates uncertainty and possibly political complications. But I'm asking you to trust me. Trust that the moon goddess knows what she's doing when she creates mate bonds. Trust that Willow has already proven herself through her actions with my children. Give her a chance to show you the same love and dedication she's shown them. An older Omega near the front stood up. Luna Willow, may I speak? Willow nodded, her heart pounding. This could go so badly. I've known you since you were a girl, the Omega said gently. Since your grandmother first brought you to the nursery when you were barely walking yourself. I've watched you grow into a woman of compassion and strength, even when life gave you every reason to become bitter and hard. You've cared for my grandpups when I couldn't. You've soothed crying infants and calmed aggressive toddlers and loved every child who came through those nursery doors like they were your own. If anyone deserves to be Luna, it's you. Welcome home, child. Welcome to where you always should have been." Other wolves began standing, adding their support. Not everyone, certainly. Some council members remained seated with disapproving expressions. Some higher-ranking wolves clearly felt an orphaned nursery worker wasn't suitable as queen. But enough wolves stood. Enough voices called out their support, that Willow felt tears streaming down her face. She was being seen. Really seen. For the first time in her adult life, she wasn't invisible. The formal mating ceremony was held 3 days later under the full moon. Willow wore a dress of white silk that shimmered like snow in the moonlight, a gift from pack members who'd spent days rushing to make her something worthy of a Luna. Her platinum hair was adorned with winter flowers, and her ice-blue eyes shone with happiness as Drake marked her before the moon goddess and their assembled pack. When the mate bond snapped fully into place, settling into both their souls like coming home, Willow gasped at the intensity. She could feel Drake's love and devotion, his regret for rejecting her before, his absolute certainty that she was his perfect match. And he could feel her love, her lingering fear and insecurity, her determination to be worthy of the position she'd been given. "You don't have to be worthy," Drake murmured against her neck, his voice too low for anyone else to hear. "You already are. You've always been. I'm the one who has to spend the rest of our lives being worthy of you." The celebration lasted until dawn. The pups stayed up far past their bedtime, dancing and playing and basking in the joy of their father finally being happy again. Ash kept introducing Willow to random pack members as "my real mama now." Snow refused to let go of Willow's hand all night. The twins fell asleep in Drake's arms, peaceful and content. The political fallout from canceling the ceremony with Cassandra was significant but manageable. The Silver Pine pack was insulted, but ultimately accepted a generous trade agreement as compensation. Some council members resigned in protest, but Drake replaced them with wolves who valued genuine bonds over political maneuvering. A few higher-ranking families grumbled about an orphan Omega becoming Luna, but their complaints died down when they saw how effectively Willow managed pack matters and how much the lower-ranking wolves adored her. Willow moved into the royal quarters with Drake and the pups. She continued working in the nursery because she loved it, but now she also took on Luna duties like mediating disputes and organizing pack events and representing the Evergreen pack at interpack gatherings. She was nervous at first, convinced she'd make mistakes or embarrass Drake. But he supported her through every challenge, and the pack's respect for her grew steadily. 6 months after becoming Luna, Willow was working in the nursery when a young Omega approached her hesitantly. The girl was thin and pale with downcast eyes and hunched shoulders that screamed of someone trying to be invisible. "Luna Willow," the girl whispered. "Can I talk to you?" "Of course," Willow said gently, setting aside the infant she'd been rocking. "What's your name?" "Sarah. I'm from the Clearwater pack originally, but I've been living here for 2 months. I don't really know anyone and I feel so alone. And I heard that you were an orphan too, and I thought maybe you'd understand what it's like to feel invisible." Willow's heart clenched with recognition. She saw herself in this girl, saw the fear and loneliness and desperate hope for connection. She took Sarah's hands in hers and smiled. "I do understand," Willow said softly. "I spent years being invisible, thinking that was safer than being seen. But I learned that the right people will see you even when you're trying to hide, that you deserve to be noticed and valued and loved exactly as you are. You're not invisible, Sarah. You're just waiting to be found by the people who will recognize how special you are." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "The Alpha King rejected you at first, right? Everyone says you were the Omega no one noticed until he realized he needed you. How did you survive that rejection? How did you keep believing you were worth something?" Willow thought about that painful selection ceremony, about the humiliation and heartbreak, about the long, lonely months that followed. "I survived because I knew my worth wasn't determined by whether someone chose me. I had value before Drake noticed me, and I'd have value even if he never had. Rejection hurts, yes, but it doesn't define you. You define yourself by how you treat others, by the love you give, by the person you choose to be when no one's watching." She pulled Sarah into a hug, feeling the girl shaking with silent sobs. "You're not alone anymore, Sarah. You're part of this pack now. You're part of my pack. And I promise you, we see you. You're not invisible here." Years later, when Luna Willow had become a legend in her own right, when young wolves spoke in awe of the orphaned Omega who became queen, she'd always make time for the invisible ones. The overlooked Omegas and forgotten pups and lonely wolves who thought no one noticed them. She'd gather them close and tell them her story. About being rejected and then chosen. About caring for 4 white wolf pups while the pack prepared a ceremony for someone else. About the Alpha King who finally came to his senses. Being invisible isn't a weakness, she'd tell them. Sometimes it's protection while you're waiting for the right moment to be seen. Sometimes it's preparation for when the right person finally looks closely enough to recognize what's been there all along. Don't be in such a hurry to be noticed. Be patient, be kind, be yourself, and trust that the moon goddess sees you even when others don't. And she's preparing something beautiful for your future. And those invisible wolves would leave her presence standing a little taller, believing a little more firmly that their story wasn't over yet, that rejection wasn't the end, that sometimes the most beautiful love stories started with being overlooked and ended with being cherished exactly as they were.